Welcome to the Basic Bee podcast, a show for the wannabe SEO savvy service providers among us, for the coaches and consultants who dream of becoming known for their storytelling skills, not to mention the solopreneurs who straight up need to master all things social proof to increase sales. After a little reluctantly fully committing to this online world of business, I quickly realized I needed to get people to come to me. I needed to tell them I was here and how I could support them. I dove headfirst into social proof, which led me to SEO, which led me to storytelling. And now it gives me great joy to share what I've learned with other business owners so they skip the hard stuff and ease straight into sales. This podcast gives you expert insights, actionable takeaways, and casual convos with some of the online world's best and brightest experts and strategists. I think that's enough of an intro, so here we go. Welcome back to the Basic Bee podcast. I am so excited to have you here, whether you're watching on YouTube or tuning in from your favorite podcast player. I'm just so grateful to have you here. And we have a very exciting guest and conversation ahead for you. So I am joined by Yasmine, Salem, Hamdan, which I'm crossing my fingers that I said correctly.
You nailed it. You're great.
We're going to be talking about the importance of solid business contracts. And here's a quick intro for you. Yasmine is an award-winning entrepreneur and IP, also known as intellectual property attorney, based in Dallas, Texas. She's the founder of Coaches and Company, where she's revolutionizing legal protection for entrepreneurs by offering like the best plug-and-play legal solutions and lawyer-created business contracts without the hefty law firm fees. Yasmine, I'm so excited to have you here today.
Brittany, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited too.
Yes. All right, I am going to jump in with my very loaded first question for people. You can't mess this up. Just whatever your honest feelings are. Which do you believe is the most important for sales? SEO, storytelling, or social proof?
Oh man. Okay. That's really good. Yeah, that's really good because they all play a role. Which do I believe is the most important for sales in particular?
Mm-hmm.
I would say social proof.
I love that.
I wanted to say SEO first because it has a very important role.
Yeah.
The specific question of sales has me thinking it's social proof. Is there a right answer?
No, there's not. No, because we talk about all three, and I want to talk about all three because I feel like they all definitely play a role. So you hit the nail on the head. But I'm also curious, why did social proof edge up to win?
So whenever I hear SEO, storytelling, and social proof, like you said, and as I mentioned, they all play a role. I think of SEO as positioning yourself to where people that are looking for you can find you. So your role of marketing is like, you don't need very much heavy lifting on that front. You know, they're looking for you. You want to be in their path and be found by them. But once they're in your world, presenting them with social proof, which I think can go hand in hand with storytelling, presenting them with that social proof can help the consumer see and put themselves in the shoes of other people who have benefited from your product or service in the past and see, okay, this could work for me too, or this could solve that problem that I also have that maybe I was seeking information for and found you through, SEO channels. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I never imagined it was going to be this fun to ask this question of an attorney. But that is why I'm like, because you've got all of like the wheels are turning. I can see the smoke fuming from your brain.
I'm like, I never thought about that, but they are all very important.
Yeah.
And I've, leveraged each of those and am actively working on bettering my storytelling abilities because, I don't know that it necessarily comes naturally, but it's a skill, just like any other skill.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to learn more of your philosophies around storytelling in particular. I don't know if we'll get into that today, but I know your podcast is chock full of them.
Let's see.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, it definitely is. We'll see if it does. But the cool thing is, in which you like totally connected for me, is that all three of them are in my case studies that I write. There's SEO, there's social proof because we have the quotes from the people, and there's the storytelling, which is just their story. So let us segue over into like the spicy, fun topic that we have you here for.
Love it.
So I love the name of your company, Coaches and Company or Coaches and Co.
Thank you.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to start your business?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you. So my background is business and intellectual property, practicing as an attorney. I launched my law firm in 2016. And I started working with entrepreneurs and business owners, providing legal services. We focused on trademark registration, protecting your copyright assets, so IP protection, and then also contract drafting. So all the clients that I was working with, most of them at least, were selling a service of some kind. And so when you sell a service, you need a contract with your client, right? And that's for starters, because as you grow, you work with contractors, you work with employees, you enter into different partnerships or collaborations, you need written agreements in place there too. So I was working with clients on that one-on-one as clients of my law firm, which was a great time. I loved it. I still love working with clients. And, from a client standpoint, I would like to say that they all had a great experience working with my law firm because they walked away having, their legal ducks in a row, everything in place. Their contracts were suited to their business. They knew their IP was protected. And so at the time, I thought that was the one and only solution for all entrepreneurs. And everybody else was just, SOL. Didn't have an option, which they kind of were, it was like, if you couldn't afford to work with a lawyer to custom create all of your contracts, you were stuck, trying to wing it, piece it together online. Maybe, your biz bestie has a contract that you pull together with like a contract you found on Google or like, I don't know, in a free Facebook group. Like, let me tell you, I've seen it all, Brittany.
I'm sure.
So that was really the option that was available to people. And my calendar was booked every week with these initial discovery calls, figuring out, if people were ready to move forward and work together and become clients of the firm. And like half of people were like, I really want to work with you, but I'm just not in a position. I don't have a budget for this right now. So I'm going to come back. And a lot of people would come back later. And it got me thinking, okay, how can I create something that doesn't require my law firm to render the services one-on-one? Because it is a specialized service and it's a high touch service. And it is not a cheap service either, to work with a law firm and hire a lawyer. And so it got me thinking, how can I create a product that does not require my law firm services, but still helps entrepreneurs get protected from a legal standpoint? And so this is certainly like maybe the longest story short, but it brought us to,
I think we all have it.
Yeah, literally. But long story short, the end of 2019, I was working on developing Coaches and Company, which my vision for it was it would be a digital product-based website where people could just go and purchase the contracts that they need that are all lawyer created. They're designed with their industry or their niche in mind. They're ready to use. They're instantly downloadable. They come with a user guide. So they're not having, lawyer holding their hand step by step or having to explain the confusing legalese. They were all legalese free where, a normal person could just grab it on the website and be able to customize it and use it in their business. That was my vision for it. And we brought it to life in 2020. And actually, we launched in July 2020. So, of course, we all know what happened March 2020. And I was like, what the hell is going on? But okay, like, let's just keep going with the plan. Like, let's not stop.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be one of the best things that we could have possibly done because everybody went remote, which we didn't see coming. I actually remember going live on Instagram in March trying to like comfort my community. Like, okay, guys, this is probably not gonna, be forever. Let's just stick it out and like, stick together and keep doing what you're doing. Don't, slam on the brakes in your business. Like most of my clients were working remotely anyways and had work from home businesses. So it's interesting how things panned out at the time. But yeah, July 2020, we went live. And it was so well received by our community. And our community has only grown since then. It's hard to believe that it's been almost 4 years now. It's been a fun ride. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah, it's been a ride for sure.
Yes.
Like I can only imagine. I absolutely love your templates. And we'll get into that because I want to talk about my experience with it. But I also kind of want to talk about how we even ended up here. So I don't remember exactly, and it's so wild because this just happened, like a month ago where we were talking?
Not long ago, yeah. Maybe even a little more than that. Yeah.
I feel like I've known you forever, but it was, definitely within like the 2-month window where I think you ended up DMing me something or like responding to a story or something like that. And then I saw we had already had somewhat of a conversation and I was like, oh my gosh, what? And you showed up. I mean, talk about like perfect timing. I was ready to update my contracts.
Love it.
I had just had a client where I was like, I really need a new contract.
Yes.
You end up in my DMs. I go and look, you were having a sale, of course. Like I always need to find things on
And we
sale.
don't have a sale all the time. Let me just, that's literally once a
No.
year.
Yeah. And it's a really good sale. So maybe if you're listening, you can hold out until,
Yes, maybe.
what was it, like Black Friday?
Yes. We'll set up a code for you guys to have in your podcast show
Ooh.
notes. Yeah, we could do that.
Oh my gosh, I love you. You're so nice. But literally, these contracts are like the best because I downloaded it, I modified it really within a matter of, I think it was like 30 or 45 minutes. The user guide that it comes with, perfection. Loved it. Not only is it user friendly, it's cute. Okay. So I don't know if you know much about astrology, but I'm like geeking out about astrology these days in my life. I'm not only a Taurus sun, Libra rising. I like pretty things. That is the point I'm getting at. And it's very pretty and it's user friendly.
Love it. A moment for the cuteness.
Yes. It made my heart so happy. What is one thing you wish business owners knew about legal things, the legal world, legal for business, like whatever direction you want to take that in? What is one thing you're like, oh, I wish you knew this?
Yeah. Brittany, there are a lot of different things, of course, that we could get into as far as important things to know. And I think we'll probably touch on a few of those throughout today's episode. But what I would say is what I wish every entrepreneur knew is that you are capable of getting your legal protections in place in your business. You're not the first person to do it, and you're certainly not the last, and it is not beyond you. Yes, there were barriers to entry in business generally, in the legal world. There was this knowledge gap and information gap between the legal world and the business world where you could only access that information if you were able to, have a $5,000 retainer with the biggest law firm in town. And that's the only way you could get great contracts in place and access ways of doing business. But that is not the case anymore. Thank God. That is not the world we are living in anymore. And so now there are tons of resources available that can help you educate yourself and get up to speed on, okay, what are these core components of legally protecting myself when I'm doing business? And it's not that complicated. Of course, there are some sources that are going to make it, if it's like a law book at a law school, like that's not exactly the source you're looking for, but that is something that we seek to be at Coaches and Company in our content online, on our blog. We're launching our podcast as well. It might be launched by the time this episode is live, and that's called the Business of Doing Business podcast, where we're trying to break down these legal concepts in a way that makes it really easy to understand and apply, because that's step one, is actually having that baseline understanding. And I want you to know that you're fully capable of this. You can do this. It's just a matter of gaining the knowledge and having access to the tools. And that's the entire reason we do what we do. So you can do it, is what I'm here to say.
I love it. That message definitely not only applies to legal. I say that a lot with SEO. I say that a lot with storytelling. I say that a lot even with social proof, because when people are first starting out, everything seems really daunting and overwhelming. I'm starting a business. What are the legal things? What do you mean social proof? I haven't taught this thing before in this capacity yet. So it all seems overwhelming, but it's all very doable. And a lot of it, at least in my mind, is finding the right people to connect with who are good teachers, who do have the resources. And you are definitely one of those people where I'm like, go find what she has on her website. There's a wealth of knowledge over there. I don't know enough. Go talk to her. So I love having someone to point people to. So what is one thing, or I guess even however broad you want to go with this, what do entrepreneurs need to know to legally protect their businesses? Let's say maybe there's something for someone who is first starting out. Even me, I had a massage therapy practice. It was an in-person practice. 2020 hit. I was like, oh, let me make sure I've still got money coming in other ways. Yeah. I jumped into the online world and now I'm fully online. So let's say it's someone like me who's entering this for the first time, or maybe they're taking a next step. What is something that they might want to know to help protect their business?
Yeah. So when you're selling a service, you can't sell the service without a contract with who it is that you're selling the service to. So that's typically the first place that most people begin. I know that some people are like, okay, let me formally form the business and form the LLC. And we could talk about that too. And that's certainly a piece of the puzzle. But I find that some people are like, let me dip my toes in a little bit. Let me, validate this idea, or see how I actually like this. Some people are all in and they know that, even if it doesn't work out the first way I try, I'm going to try something else. And so maybe let me just form the business right out the gate and then everything is under there. That is my ideal approach. My ideal approach is form an LLC or a corporation. That's that formal business entity at your state level, wherever you are in the US, and abroad, there are business entities as well, of course. But in the US, every state, all 50 states have their own Secretary of State's office, and you can form a business in their office. You can do it digitally, online, and form that LLC or the corporation. As far as the difference between the two, they're pretty much the same thing, except corporations have more formalities necessary, like filing and record keeping to maintain the status of it. LLCs are for people like you and I who don't have, a bunch of shareholders or investors or planning to issue stock later, et cetera. There are less formalities associated with maintaining an LLC. That's not to say you can't form a corporation. I know entrepreneurs like you and I who have corporations for various reasons, but that's just a general overview. So my preference is form the LLC or the corporation, and then just start doing all of your business activity under that entity. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have it, that's not necessarily, the wrong way of going about it. It's just the more, I would say, risk averse and like precautionary way is let me make sure I have an LLC or a corporation in place. And the function of it is to provide you with that personal liability protection. That way, if anything goes south in your business, you have that protection of your personal assets and you individually. So having that entity in place is a great first place to begin. And then if you're ready to make your first sale, ready to work with your first client, having a contract in writing is absolutely the way to go. In my opinion, it's not negotiable. Like, don't accept money from anybody without the terms in writing, because you'll be saving yourself a lot of potential headache, and it can be expensive to clean up a mess. It can be time consuming. So have a contract in place with your clients. If you're hiring anyone, have a contract in place with them. I mean, there are many benefits to having a contract in place, but I would say most importantly, it's to support the relationship and to really lay out a plan of, okay, this is what we're agreeing to. This is how we're going to proceed. And then have all of the what ifs in place. So like, what if, somebody requests a refund? What if somebody needs to cancel the contract? Or what if somebody needs to pause the term? What if somebody wants to add on some extra services? What if somebody needs to reschedule the calls? And, an example of that is if you work with the client on an ongoing basis and they're rescheduling calls every month, do those calls roll over to the next month, or are they forfeited at the end of the month? Or do they have to be redeemed within a certain period of time within the original call? Like, you get to set all those terms as the business owner. And that's the beauty of it, is I feel like, and I really believe that you have so much power as the business owner. You get to set the terms. You have that home court advantage. I think of it as the law of your land, is lay down the law, like make it clear. Okay, what are the terms when somebody works with me? What are the policies that are going to apply? You get to determine those policies. And guess what happens if you don't determine those policies? You have to negotiate them in real time, which is not fun when you're already in a contract with a client, because then there's a lot more at risk. Things could go south. You guys could come to a disagreement. Maybe the deal falls apart. Maybe they demand a refund at that point, or they want to cancel, or other possible scenarios. So have the contract in place no matter what. Don't accept money from anybody without a contract that states what you're accepting it for and what your obligations are and what their obligations are. And that, I believe, is what makes for a successful working relationship with clients.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I remember when not first, but the second time, within the last 2 months where we were connecting on Instagram, I don't know if it was an interview or a reel or something that I saw where you were speaking with someone else and you were talking about there is no legalese in here. It's very easy for the business owner. Let's say it's me and you come to me and we're doing SEO services. I feel protected. I feel very clear on what the contract is. You feel protected and you feel very clear on what the contract is. And that's one thing that I like, is that it's a win-win. It's not like I'm over here being, slimy about things and there's stuff that's hidden in here and you can't understand even the language of it. And you do run into contracts like that where it's like, let me make sure 4 people in my life read this because I don't have an attorney and I want to make sure that I'm not getting screwed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's never the situation you want to be in as the business owner either, where you're putting forth a contract that the client doesn't understand. You run the risk of it possibly deterring that, like, they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to work with this person. What are they even talking about? I don't understand this contract. Like, I don't feel confident in them. It feels like they're trying to deceive me in some way. Or if you find yourself as the business owner putting forth a contract like that and the client asks for an explanation of what a part means, and you're just like, I don't know what, like, that's not
Let me go
good.
find the attorney that created this. We'll be right back.
Exactly. And then you have to pay that lawyer to explain it to you, or you're trying to decipher what this means. Like, I don't believe that contracts need to be that way. I know they don't have to be that way because I've seen it work successfully where they can be in plain English where everyone can understand. And that's actually the best way to apply a contract as well. You know, when you do need to enforce a policy, that way it's crystal clear as to what is being enforced, as opposed to there's some room for misinterpretation potentially.
And let's talk about the different types of contracts that you have, because you have contracts for every type of situation. I was looking and I was like, this is amazing. I can choose exactly what I need.
Yes.
And like you said, all of the what ifs that you were laying out earlier, that's covered in the contract. If something didn't make sense for me, or there were definitely sections where it was like this language or this language. And I was like, oh, this one makes more sense to me. I like this. This applies more to my business. It was so easy for me to go in and tailor it to my needs and to my clients' needs. So let's talk about maybe like a few different examples of the contracts, and then we'll go into like some of the specifics that are in there that we get to modify as the business owner.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brittany. I appreciate you. And we do have contracts for pretty much any situation you could find yourself in and any service that you're planning to sell. So we have personal coaching contracts if you're working one-on-one with clients. We also have group coaching contracts if you have a group program. We have terms and conditions for an online course if that's something you're selling. For a masterclass or a live workshop, terms and conditions for those, we've got those. So all of your different offers, we have those. And that's not an exhaustive list. We have more that you can check out on the website for sure. And then there are specific services around marketing and operations. So as you and I both know, there are so many opportunities for offering services to others. So if you're selling copywriting services or general marketing services, if you're selling graphic design or web design and branding development services, podcast production services, Pinterest management services, like all of that, we have all of that.
They have so much over there. It's absolutely incredible.
Our goal is to just have whatever an entrepreneur needs to sell services online. There's a contract where you're not having to hire a law firm and shell out like $3,000 plus for a custom contract, which is not even the best option, in my opinion. I've seen contracts drafted by lawyers that I'm like, this lawyer clearly had no idea of the nature of the transaction or the nature of the type of business at hand. And that's not to knock the lawyer. They might be a great attorney, you know, a great advocate, very qualified to do, you know, specific kind of work. But when it comes to the nature of marketing, selling, and delivering a service online, there are unique implications there. And it's a unique container and a unique transaction. And so our contracts are all, as you mentioned, legalese free. So it's in plain English, easy to understand, easy to explain, easy to apply, and are industry specific. So they're specific for the type of interaction and transactions that we're engaging in. We also have contracts for your website, like terms and conditions and privacy policy. If you're collecting any data on your website, even if it's just a name and email address for your email list, you need to have a privacy policy on your website telling people how you're using their data and how they can contact you if they want it deleted. And then for your team members, if you're hiring contractors or employees, we've got contracts for those too, including like if you have a coaching program, if you hire an associate coach, or if you're hiring a virtual assistant, if you are bringing guests onto your podcast, we have a guest release. We've got it all. And, you know, that's not to say we have every single contract that you could possibly need. We're always open to receiving requests and recommendations for contracts that our community members want to see, and we're rolling those out throughout the year as well. But I'm pretty happy with the suite of products that we have available for our community.
Okay, you get it. You know SEO is important, but no, you're not interested in learning another skill. Who has the time? But who are you supposed to trust with the task of getting SEO to work for you? Someone who won't ghost you mid-project or treat you like a dum-dum lollipop. Someone who actually wants to empower you and your team with all things SEO. Hi, yes, it's me, Brittany, and you are the person I created the SEO packet for. You're curious, you want to understand this thing better, but like only a little bit. You don't actually want to do the doing. This way, you get the key SEO stuff super fast, and you get support throughout and beyond the project. No more letting Google gift you the wrong SEO strategy. Time to put the right words in the right places and get found online by the right people. Find all the info you need below. Yeah, you should be. I mean, it really is a comprehensive list, and I felt very good looking through that to be like, one, I felt really confident even understanding what I needed to buy. Now, I am still the type of business owner, the buyer, where I'm like, let me just make sure. So I did DM you
I
and I
hear
asked you a question, and you were like right there. I mean, not immediately, and I wouldn't expect you to be there immediately,
you.
but just saying, like, I have definitely had some maybe like lacking interactions in DMs where I will have a question and I really have all intentions of buying something from someone, but I don't hear back from them, even like a few days later. I just want you to know that I really appreciate that you were even there to answer a question, even though it was like, oh yeah, Brittany, like no worries. You can definitely modify that in the contract.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate you back. That's part of the reason I wanted to have you on, to shout you out. Okay, let's end with, what would you say is like one smart next step that business owners can take to legally protect themselves?
One smart next step, I would say, I don't want to be a broken record talking about contracts, but I would say if
Do
you
it.
are a business, yes, okay, I will. Thank you. I will gladly.
Because they are really critical.
Because I already do. I'm always talking about contracts. But yes, you're right. They're critical. They absolutely are. And they are your first line of defense, in any dispute that might arise within your business when it comes to your clients or your contractors. Is typically when there's a dispute, let's say you and your client are working together and the client is upset about something, they're typically not going to run to the courthouse and file a lawsuit immediately. They're going to, and you don't want that either. You don't want to do that either. You want to resolve it between the two of you. And so you want to be able to say, okay, I hear you. Let's take a look at the contract that we agreed to and see if there's something in the contract that can help us and support us in resolving this dispute. If it's a good contract, there should be something that clearly lays out, maybe the client was like, I thought you were going to, provide me with XXX service, whatever fill in the blank services. And then you're like, well, it's not exactly what I agreed to. But if it's not in writing, you don't know what exactly they thought you were going to provide and what exactly you agreed to provide. So ideally, you can go look at the contract. Let's see, what are the scope of services that were laid out? Oh, it was actually X, Y, and Z. Oh, well, I'm good because I was, misunderstanding what our agreement was. So now we're clear because we had it in writing. Or perhaps it's something around, the client believed that you were going to provide a service that was outside of the scope of your services. And that way you're able to go back to the contract and take a look and say, okay, well, this is what we agreed to. So this is what was stated. Let's say it's something related to payment. Many people offer payment plans to their clients, which I think is great in terms of accessibility to services, especially if you're serving small business owners. So in your contract, you really want to make sure you're laying out the payment plan schedule. If they're providing you with that first payment on that first day of payment, when is the second payment due? When is the third payment due? What constitutes a late payment? If there is a late payment, what policy do you apply? Is there a late payment fee that you're able to apply? If you don't have that in your contract, you don't really have any grounds for applying a late payment fee. So all of these different situations that come, it's the nature of client relationships, you can account for those in your contract. And so a great first step, I would say, is revisit the contract that you're using right now. If you're using a contract with your clients, take a look at it with a set of fresh eyes, and then set a recurring event on your calendar for every quarter, every 3 months, at least every 6 months, to review your client contract. And as time goes on, the more clients you work with, you'll find that you get clearer on the kind of policies that you need to have in place. You can relate to that. I think we all can, as you get really clear on what this looks like in practice and what kind of policies do you want to maybe modify or add in. What kind of what ifs should you incorporate? Because it's just something to be expected now. It's not like a one-off situation. It's like, okay, this comes up with every single client. I should probably account for it in my contract. That way we have some clarity around how to proceed. So I would revisit your contract. And if you know it needs to be updated, I invite you to check out our contracts, and we will have a code. I'll make sure we get one set up for you guys so you can save some
Thank
money on your
you.
purchase too. Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And like I said, set up that recurring reminder on your calendar to review your contract and revise it before you send it out to more clients. And that, I think, sets you up for some great client relationships, ideally.
Yeah, it really does. I actually made notes while you were talking because I was like, this situation and this thing.
Yes.
And you already talked about one of them, which is like, I've definitely learned lessons, I would say, from each client that I worked with of what I need to include, what I need to update in my contract.
Yes.
And it totally is a first line of defense. I'm so grateful I've been a part of a couple of teams, like being brought in as a contractor, where I have seen that business owner go, okay, let's actually check the contract. Oh, this is what we said here. And it was just such a like kind, gentle, and yet firm like redirection of like, all right, you think we're going down this set of railroad tracks. We're actually over here. And it's like, oh, okay. And it completely redirects in a positive and quick and efficient way the project and like everyone who's, you know, all hands on deck and, oh, okay, this is what we're going to be doing. So that for sure definitely helps. So I got your contract. I updated it for my purposes, put it in, used it with a client. And then I think the next week, I had someone that had signed one of the older versions of the contract that I was using, and she didn't really read the contract when she signed. Like, she was like, oh yeah, sure, you're great. Like, let's just work together.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate. But also, even though it was the older version of the contract, it still did help to have something in place where she was under the impression that these were the deliverables and actually what we had agreed to was something slightly different. And I was like, okay, you know, I could definitely help you with XYZ. This is what our current contract says. If you want that extra work, it'll be X amount and I'll be able to deliver it by X date. Let me know if you want me to proceed. Now, I will say it has taken me years to get to that point where I can confidently rattle that off and not be like, you know, like if you want to, right?
I know. It's challenging at first, for sure. It's because it's new.
Yeah, it's new. And having a really solid contract that you feel good about, that you feel confident putting your name on and having clients sign gives you that extra bit of confidence to go into this work, to have your business, to approach clients, and to even be able to say, just like what you said earlier, I hear you. This is what's in the contract. If you want to do blah, 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 this is what that will look like. And I will also say, just even having all of the what ifs in your templates really even opened my eyes to a couple of things that I still had yet not thought about. And I was like, oh, yeah, I really like that. I'm going to leave that in there. This is great. Or I'm going to modify this slightly. It was just perfect because I could make it what I needed to be. And it was still getting me thinking and therefore protecting myself and my client in another instance that I hadn't even thought about. So highly recommend you go check out these contracts.
Love it. Thank you. That's music to my ears. I'm so glad to hear that you found those to be useful and maybe some things that you hadn't considered. But, you know, we created the contracts from experience and working with tons of clients and seeing the kinds of problems that they encounter with their clients, the kinds of disputes that arise. And the goal, of course, is to avoid the disputes from arising and to reducing the risk. Yeah, reducing the likelihood of disputes and of problems and of misunderstandings with your clients. And, you know, as many things in this life, it comes down to communication.
Shocker there.
Yeah, I know. Big shocker. Like resolving and avoiding those disputes comes down to clear communication. And in business, you want to make sure that communication is in writing so that you can reference it, especially if you've got a long-term working relationship with your clients. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate you. And I'm so glad that you found them beneficial.
I mean, it's nice to know that your work is working, right? Like that's just like you said, music to your ears. It's great to hear.
Yeah.
I think you have something, and I've actually used it, so I know you have something that can be really helpful for folks when they're getting started out. It's, you know, some sort of a guide, right?
Yes. I actually was going to plug it a second ago whenever you asked, like, where should we start? And then I was like, okay, let me give you a tangible action item. Actually, we have a Legally Launch Guide. So you can download our free Legally Launch Guide. It's a short ebook, that PDF format that you can download and read. And it just takes you through the high points of what you need to be aware of, from forming an entity to having client contracts in place. We even get into intellectual property and what IP means. Nothing too wild, but
Mm-mm.
just enough for you to feel like, okay, I actually understand what this means within the context of my business. And yeah, some really great resources in there for you. So check it out. Hopefully we can include a link in the show notes. Otherwise, you can
Oh,
find
yeah.
it on our website. Yeah, at coachesandcompany.com. And I hope it is helpful to anybody listening.
It is. I can guarantee it is. It will definitely be linked in all of the places. Well,
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad you were here and we were able to have this conversation.
I
But
am
before
too.
you go, where can people find you? Definitely plug the podcast again.
Yes, yes. So I'll be jamming out over on our podcast, the Business of Doing Business podcast, wherever you're listening to podcasts. You can find it at tbodb.com or thebusinessofdoingbusiness.com. Either one, you'll find us there. And then we're on Instagram at Coaches and Company. I've been loving Threads. I think you have
Yes,
too, Brittany.
I know.
Yes,
I
it's
love your thoughtful threads. I'm just
thank
over there
you.
like, this is my
Yes.
answer. They're
Thank
great.
you. Yes. I love it too. I love the engagement and the conversations and just hearing people's thoughts and ideas. It's a different format than Instagram, which I liked
Mhm.
Twitter for it, or X or whatever it's called. I liked it for that reason before. It was just the crowd that I was not crazy about. And so now I feel
Yeah.
like the worlds are colliding. And all of
Mhm.
my friends that were on Instagram we're able to communicate in this new way. So it's been really fun. And yeah, I
Yeah.
like to hang out over there, but I'm all over the internet. Wherever you're hanging out, you can find me there. Yes, but would love to have you over on the podcast. Would love to have you join us on the podcast too soon.
Yeah. I
That
would
would
love
be
that.
great. Yes. And yeah,
Yeah.
hope to connect with all of your listeners as well.
Yes. Thank you so much. This has been exciting. I can't wait
Thanks.
to see where we go from here. We're gonna have to do like
I
a
am
catch-up
too.
episode once the podcasts have been out for a while.
We
Once our babies have
will.
grown up a little bit.
Exactly. Exactly. For sure. Thanks for having me on, Brittany. I appreciate you.
Thank you. That was really something, wasn't it? Let that really sink in and guide you toward being the answer to even more Googled questions. Thanks so much for joining me this episode. You are the reason this show exists and that it keeps growing. You know, thanks to all those follows and reviews. If you know someone who could benefit from what was shared, send it to them. We don't do shy around here. If you thought of clarifying or follow-up questions while listening, you know what to do. Say hi on Instagram. Check the show notes for all the things that were mentioned, and I'll talk to you soon, friend.